Welcome back, it's Richard here, and in this episode we're going to take another look at sociology, A Level, and in particular we're going to look at the educational achievement of some different groups, starting with the social class. So educational achievement differs between certain groups of people, and sociologists have identified three factors that account for the differences: social class, gender, and ethnicity. Now, differences in achievements between pupils of different social classes can be divided into those that are external of the school environment and those that are internal within the school environment. So some external influences include material factors such as poverty, home circumstances, and the catchment area that they live in, and also cultural factors, which include parental level of education, attitudes towards education in their family, language use, and the lack of cultural capital. And some internal influences include teacher evaluations, stereotyping within education, streaming and labeling in classrooms, self-fulfilling prophecies, and subcultures that occur within different education settings. So just to recap again, those five internal influences of education achievement are the self-fulfilling prophecy. So that is that you meet or don't meet whatever society expects you to achieve. Subcultures that occur within schools that can create different norms. Teacher evaluations, so how strong how good your teacher is, can play a big role. Stereotyping that goes on within the classroom, that's emphasizing any stereotype norms, maybe to do with gender or race. And streaming, setting, and labeling students can also have an influence on their education achievement. And some cultural factors that influence educational achievement. First of all, is the parental level of education. Secondly, parental attitude towards education, parental language use, and the lack of cultural capital. Now, differences in achievement between pupils of different social classes can be divided into those that are external of the school environment and those that are internal or within the school environment. So to take a bit more of a deeper look at some external factors, so poverty and home circumstances can affect educational achievement because, first of all, poor quality housing can lead to less room for students or for young people to study. A poor diet and health can increase absences from school. Less money may be available to spend in these households on educational resources. And there is often less access to further education because people from these households are fearful of the debt that it will create. One other cultural factor that may affect educational achievement is the parents' level of knowledge or education. So this can lead to less confidence in dealing with teachers and other educational issues, as well as feeling unable to help children with their schoolwork. Parents whose own experience of education was negative might not value education in the same way that some of those who had a positive experience of education, and that might be passed on to their children, and that may affect their educational outcomes. Now, attitudes and values can also impact educational outcomes. And those pupils with a present time orientation, that's a lack of emphasis on the long-term goals and future planning, and those with displayed immediate gratification, so that's getting pleasure now instead of postponing future rewards, both those groups often underachieve at school. So just to recap that, present time orientation, that's where there's a lack of focus on long-term goals and future planning, and the people who display immediate gratification. So that's getting pleasure now instead of postponing it for future rewards. Language also plays a role in education attainment, and Basil Bernstein suggests that the working class children employ restricted code, while middle class children use elaborate code, which places the latter in an advantageous position as the code mainly used by teachers. So if the middle class children are able to communicate with teachers better than working class children, then they are more likely to achieve in school. The lack of cultural capital, which is, for example, access to books, newspapers, museums, and other resources, as well as a lack of social capital, and that's knowing the right people, can also place working class children in a disadvantageous position. So just to recap what Basil Bernstein said. So he suggested that working class children employ restricted language code, while many middle class children use elaborated code, which places them in an advantageous position, as that's the code that's mainly used by teachers. And those external factors influencing educational achievement are poverty, use of language, parental education, attitudes and values, and cultural capital. And some examples of external influences of education achievement with a bit more of a detail. So they can be classed basically as either material or cultural factors. Material factors are things like poverty, home circumstances, and catchment area. And the cultural factors are things like parental level of education, attitudes towards education, and the language use and lack of cultural capital. And three things that affect educational achievement: social class, gender, ethnicity. You can also add race to that as well. Now, as we mentioned earlier, pupils with a present time orientation, so that is when a lack of emphasis from the pupil is on long-term goals and future planning, and also children who display immediate gratification, so that's they choose to get pleasure now rather than postponing future, maybe better rewards. Both those groups underachieve at school. And to go way back right to the beginning of this episode, the 5 internal influences of educational achievement are teacher evaluations, stereotyping, streaming setting and labeling, the self-fulfilling prophecy, and subcultures. Now we can also look at social class internal factors and evaluation. So working class underachievement is a result of a combination of factors, both external, material, and cultural, as well as internal factors from within the school. So working class pupils are more likely to be labelled as low ability and placed in low ability sets and streams. Working class pupils are more likely to be seen as less cooperative and more troublesome, lacking in cultural resources and parental interest, and further removed from the image of the ideal pupil as their middle class peers. Also, negative labels attached to working class pupils are likely to result in a self-fulfilling prophecy where pupils conform to their stereotype, further impacting academic outcomes. Working class pupils are often placed in lower sets and are seen as more likely to become involved in antisocial or anti-school subcultures. Working class underachievement is a result of a combination of factors, both external, material, and cultural, as we've discussed, as well as internal factors from within the school. Now remember, cultural factors placing too much emphasis on the cultural factors can ignore the practical difficulties involved. For example, parents might show a lack of interest because of their own lack of confidence, which may well be the result of their own poor educational achievement or their own bad experiences at school. Working class parents often also work longer and unsociable hours and are able and are unable to attend events such as parents' evenings or other meetings with teachers or with schools. And their lack of attendance might be worryingly seen as evidence of their lack of interest by the child, which can help play this idea in the student's head of a lack of investment from the parents.